I think John Kerry said that anyone who stands by when these crimes are done will have to answer to history. And I am sure you and Russia would be included in that, and the United States. But are you afraid that you may be seen today as standing by a regime that's oppressing and committing crimes? Is there a danger that you will be seen as a protector of this government?
We're not defending the current Syrian government. We're defending other things entirely. We're defending the principles and norms of international law. We're defending the current world order. We're defending the rule that even a possibility of using force must be discussed within the framework of existing world order and international law. This is what we're defending. This is the absolute value. When decisions concerning the use of force are made outside the UN and the Security Council, it raises a concern that such illegal actions could be taken against any country under any pretext. You've just said that Mr. Kerry believes that it was Assad's forces that used chemical weapons, but the Secretary of State in Mr. Bush's administration was trying to convince the international community that Iraq had chemical weapons in a similar fashion. He even showed us a test tube with white powder in it. The argument turned out to be invalid, but a military operation was conducted based on it, a military operation many in the US now call a mistake. Have we forgotten that? Are we proceeding from the assumption that new mistakes are so easy to avoid? I assure you, it is not so. Everyone remembers what happens, and they take it into account when making their decisions.
So I understand that you will not accept the evidence that has been offered so far as convincing. What would it take to convince you?
We would be convinced by a detailed investigation and by direct evidence of who exactly used chemical weapons and what substances were used. Then we'll be ready to take decisive and serious action.
Mr. Putin, is Russia still fulfilling weapon contracts signed with Syria?
Yes, of course. We're doing this because we believe we're working with the legitimate government and we're violating neither international law nor our obligations. The UN has not imposed any restrictions on the export of weapons to Syria. We feel so bad that Syrian militants have been receiving weapons without any restrictions from the very first day of this conflict, despite the fact that it is against international law to supply weapons to the country in the state of military conflict.
I would like to clarify the situation with the state-of-the-art S-300 missile systems.
Go ahead.
There's been so much speculation around this. Has Russia actually delivered the S-300 to Syria or not?
The S-300 are not the newest systems, though they might be a little better than Patriot missiles. But we do have S-400 and S-500 coming up soon. These are certainly very efficient weapons. We have a contract to supply S-300 missiles, and we've already supplied some parts, but not all of it, because we decided to suspend supplies for a while. But if we see international law being violated, we will reconsider our future actions, including supplies of such sensitive weapons to certain regions of the world.
Many national leaders made it very clear that their countries would in absolutely no way become engaged in this crisis. Would you also make a similar statement?
I'd like you to note that presently there are no Russian armed forces units stationed anywhere outside of our country. The only exceptions are the 2 military bases on the territory of the former Soviet Union and our peacekeepers in operations within the UN mandates. This is something really good, something we're happy about. We're certainly not planning to, and we will not get engaged in any sorts of conflicts. As far as the decision made by a number of nations not to participate in the military operation, frankly, I was quite surprised by it. I had believed that the Western society has been long acting under the principle of certain uniformity, similar to decisions that had been taken at rallies of the Soviet Communist Party. But it proved not to be the case. Indeed, there are individuals who treasure their sovereignty, who analyse the situation, and who have the guts to take decisions in the interests of their own countries and to defend their stance. This is a good thing, which says that the world is truly growing stronger in its multipolarity.
Mr. Putin, what place do you think the Syrian conflict will have on the G20 summit agenda? The summit is in St. Petersburg and is just around the corner.
First of all, I'd like to say that the agenda for the upcoming G20 summit has been drawn up well in advance. We've discussed it with our partners, and we don't think we have the right to go back on our agreement. The G20 summit will mainly focus on the world economy and economic problems, such as slow economic growth, unemployment, corruption, tax crimes and management. But considering the grave situation in Syria and that we can't agree on what is to be done to resolve this extremely important issue, we could probably take advantage of the fact that the leaders of the 20 leading economies in the world will be meeting in St. Petersburg and spend some time discussing this topic. We will not impose it, though. We can just propose to deviate from the agreed agenda and discuss the Syrian conflict. I want to stress this again. We are hosting the summit, and that means following certain rules. The agenda has been agreed on beforehand, and we don't believe we have the right to single-handedly modify it. However, I will certainly propose to my colleagues to discuss the situation in Syria. I hope my counterparts will agree.